afternoon, everyone, or morning or evening, depending whereabouts you are in the world. I am Mel. I am the food addictions and binge eating rapid transformational therapist, and I am going to do a quick video today to share with you why it's really important to take advantage of all the spare hours that you have that you're not binging to help you prevent the binge. So basically, if you've not met me before, I help women all around the world through the internet by using hypnosis to stop their destructive eating behaviors like food addictions and binge eating, well, within 1 to 3 sessions. And that's all done on the internet. If you want to know more about that, you can click on my banner to find out more information. So this video is a really quick one, really, because it kind of popped in my head, and it's actually someone who kind of messaged me. I get a lot of messages on my inbox for help to try and stop these destructive behaviors that are hurting your body, your mind and your health, and without doing the cheating way, if you will, by using hypnosis to change deep-rooted hurt or trauma to release you from those that then, as a result, frees you from whatever behaviors that you're caught in. And after all, things like binge eating, food addictions is no different, really. I mean, you could say that there are some differences, but really all these things like addictions and kind of self-sabotaging behaviors, attracting bad partners, really bad with money, and so all sorts. Binge eating is only a symptom of a deeper hurt. So if you haven't seen any of my previous videos, just to let you know that most of our behaviors are driven by the subconscious mind, and most of the time we are not in control of what we do. We are reacting and living our lives in mainly autopilot. So bearing that in mind, that we're on autopilot, it's only like 5% of the time, especially now that I'm speaking to you, this is intentional. But everything else that we do, our behaviors, the way we think, is driven by things that are not consciously controlled by ourselves. Anyway, bearing that in mind, that the problem with most people when they struggle with addictions, and especially like food addictions and binge eating, is just they're trying to find a remedy that directly tries to treat the binge eating itself or the food addiction itself. So they're trying to find tools to stop them binging. So, and what I mean about that is like, people end up doing dieting to stop themselves putting on further weight, and they try to follow these meal plans so that they can hopefully eventually eat like a normal person. But the problem is that most of the time these things are just, not focusing on the real problem. And so a lot of people, as a result, when they say, oh, how do I stop binging? They're like thinking, all these wonderful tools that, do, even though it does work in the short term, like if you're trying to go for a binge, go out for a walk at the time. But what I found is, like many of the clients that have come to me who've tried all these things, it doesn't work because they've not conditioned their minds to detach themselves from the actual binge eating. So even though they're like trying these different tools, which they do work, and especially if you consistently do them, when you haven't really changed your mindset when it comes to binging, it's kind of almost there, like waiting to bite you in the ass, one day. It's not really gone, it's just waiting. What I've noticed with a lot of people as well, especially like people that like come to me, and before we actually do the inner healing, the deep inner healing using the RTT hypnosis, is that they would try and kind of white knuckle themselves through the binging. And as you know from my previous video, when you start to fight against the binge, it ends up fueling it even more. And because we are predominantly run by the subconscious mind, which is 95% of our actions, you can then understand why we often fail to the urges, because you've only got the measly 5% of you that really wants to not binge, and then the 95% of you who has developed this habit over most people a lifetime. So you've got a lifetime worth of beliefs and connections pulling you to binge, and you've got your little you 5% trying to stop binging, and so that's why it often doesn't work. So my method is, and this is what has actually helped me personally to recover from an eating disorder, and I actually suffered from all of them, so like anorexia, bulimia, and mainly binge eating and overeating pretty much since I was a kid. And the only thing that really worked was to completely change my mindset, and the only way that can ever happen is if you get the information to the subconscious mind. So there are two ways of doing that. You've got like the first way is doing work like hypnosis, to go in through the back door and find out why you are binge eating, why you are using food as any other tool other than for true hunger. Why is it that you're eating vast amounts of foods? Because believe it or not, the body, the mind only wants to do things to make you happy. It only has one job, and that is to keep you alive, to do everything that is for your benefit. You are not born, nobody is born to want to hurt themselves. We're naturally born to want to survive. So binging, in actual fact, is a protective. It's doing a purpose. It could be protection. I know with my past clients, many of my past clients have gone through a lot of child abuse, and trauma is very typical with my overweight clients. So very typically the weight issue is connected to protection, because as a child, when they were abused as a child, they were small, they were helpless. So as they were traumatized as young children, the weight in actual fact played a key role for their survival. The weight actually helped them to not be vulnerable, because in the child's mind, in the subconscious mind, which never forgets anything, the whole purpose of the weight is to protect them, because the logic of the subconscious mind is the weight protects them, because being small and vulnerable gets them hurt. So it really does make logical sense in the brain. And the unfortunate thing is, and these are things, beliefs that are really, really, really deep rooted in many of my clients who suffer from weight problems and binge eating and food addiction. So the hypnosis is a very powerful way to be free from food addictions and binging, because we then go through a process of eliminating those old beliefs, because the clients who are stuck in those beliefs think that they're still a child, and we release them and they are free to be the adult that they should be and have the life they really, really, truly deserve. Because even though they were hurt as a child, they don't deserve to continue to keep hurting themselves for the rest of their lives for something that they didn't even do in the first place. So that's the first method of how you can change a destructive behavior, self-sabotaging behavior, because it's just stuck on a record, literally. It's like a child's belief stuck on a record. So that's the first way. The second way, and I've mentioned before, is by habit forming. And a lot of people, like I said, they try to avoid the actual binge. And many of my clients beforehand, they said, how am I supposed to do it? Because I feel so out of control when it comes to binging. It's like, I'm not thinking, I'm just shoving the food in my mouth. And, it's like, I can't do it. And the thing is, it's just because they have no idea that when you're actually binging, or you're about to go for the binge, it is going to be really hard to fight against those binge like cold turkey. So the way that I would try to change things is like what I told to one of someone else who messaged me to see if I can help them to avoid it. It's not actually the time when you're about to binge you should be worried about, because these are the times where you're trying to fight something that is really, really powerful, and those urges. You're going to have to need an army of people to tie you down to stop you from going those binges, unless you've started implementing the tools that I've already shared on my past videos. Those are tools that will help you at those times where you feel out of control. Like I've said to many people who ask, how do I stop the binge? Is that you don't actually work on stopping the actual binge itself. What you do is take advantage of all that time that you're not binging, because when you're not binging, you are in control. You're not binging 24 hours in the day. You're only doing it in maybe half an hour, 1 hour, sporadically maybe through the day. But there are plenty of times when you are not involved in binging. And those are the most important times, in my experience, to change your habits. Okay, so that's why it's really important to follow the tips that I've been sharing on my videos, because use the spare time you have when you're not binging to change. And this is where I think that you are going to really see significant changes. And if you keep doing it again and again and again, eventually that will change the connections in your subconscious mind. So one of those things are, which is really, I guess, one of the most important things to work on, is your happiness. So most of the time, binges and food addictions is really trying to numb or avoid feelings. So that is why it's so important to change the way that you feel about yourself as one of the first things that you do to try to recover from binging. Not just stop the binging at that moment, but every other time of the day, working on making yourself feel really good. You know, so one of the tips I'll be sharing with you today is really as a result of a lot of the results from the sessions I have with my client. Typically the reasons why they're suffering from food addictions and binge eating is because they don't feel lovable or they don't feel enough. So this is a deep belief in their subconscious mind. So what I suggest is to start giving those loving, positive things to your mind. And even though you won't believe it at first, when you start repeating loving words to yourself, your mind will eventually let it seep through to the subconscious mind. And the thing is, when you start feeling good about yourself, it is so much less likely that you're going to want to go to food to make you feel better. Because if you already feel better, you'll probably find that most of the time when you're feeling good, you don't really want to go for these foods. It's usually at moments when you're feeling bored, feeling stressed, feeling anxious, feeling sad. Apart from like talking about celebrations, that was for another video. But usually when you're feeling okay with yourself, like the urges are not so strong. So one of the things that you can do to make yourself feel good about yourself is by putting post-it notes all around your home. It might look a bit tacky, so you might want to like invest in a really nice, pretty post-it notepad and just put it beside your bed. And the first thing you put, like, I am lovable, I am enough, and then read it out to yourself. And then on your mirror, you know, put a little post-it note on the fridge. It may sound really trivial, it may sound like nothing. I haven't got my bracelet on me, and usually I have a bracelet with like I am enough on there. And the idea is that these repetitive messages that you keep seeing, you know, one of the best places inside the cupboard. You know, every time you open a cupboard door, it's got like, you are enough, I am lovable, you are lovable on there. Because the more you see this, the more it'll be imprinted in your mind. So even if it really just sounds so cheesy, it has been proven in neuroscience that these repetitive messages does sink in. And this is how actually comedians, magicians, you know, like Paul McKenna, he's a magician, he's like really famous in England. I don't know if anyone knows him, but they tricked this guy by like thinking that they could read his mind. So basically he asked him, you know, some various questions, and what happened was that Paul McKenna ended up guessing what kind of bicycle that he would get down to the colour. And the guy was like, wow, you're like such a mind reader. But what this guy didn't actually see is that Paul McKenna had been priming his mind for weeks. So Paul McKenna was like putting pictures of a red bicycle in various places where this guy was going to. So it'd be like a picture as he'd walking to the bus stop, he'll see a red bicycle. As he would be walking into a shop, there'll be a red bicycle on a poster, and there'd be basically red bicycles everywhere. So when it came to the day a few weeks later, Paul McKenna said to him, you know, what is the kind of thing that you would have wanted as a child or something like that? I can't exactly remember the story. And Paul McKenna actually had a photo of this red bicycle that he'd been priming this guy with. And this guy goes, I don't know why, but I have this feeling that I would have really wanted a red BMX bike, you know, and he described it. And Paul McKenna went, you mean something like this? And this guy was absolutely shocked. He was like, wow, you're like a magician, which he is, of course. You read minds. But when you actually went behind the scenes, this is science. This is how our brains function. So if Paul McKenna could make someone imagine that he wants this bicycle, can you imagine what would happen if you just put I am enough, I am lovable all around your apartment? Every time you open your phone and a little pop-up reminder comes on, you know, like your calendar pop-up, and it says you are enough, you are lovable. And I tell you what, if you want to put nitro on that and really, really change that, say it out loud every time you see it. You're like, I am lovable, I am so lovable, I am enough. Because it may sound really cheesy for you, but experiencing with many, many of my clients who have had overweight issues, who have got food addictions, who have had binge eating, and all it came down to was really three things: not being lovable, not feeling enough, and believing things weren't available to them, believing love was not available to them, you know. So knowing the fact that most of our problems root to the belief of not feeling enough, not feeling lovable, if you kept on priming your mind all throughout the day when you're not binging, see how that actually starts changing your life if you start doing that. So anyway, that was kind of like my random thought of the day. I hope that's kind of giving you some food for thought, mind food for thought. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye, and I hope you have a lovely weekend. And if you're still struggling to stop food addictions or binge eating and want to get out of that fast using hypnosis, you can click on my banner to find out more and schedule a free assessment call with me to discuss what's happening with you and how the program works to stop those destructive behaviours for good. Okay, take care everyone and keep strong. Bye.